I'm Jennifer Runyon. I'm editor of Renewable Energy World and Power Grid, and I'm content director at Clarion Energy. So today's discussion, Utility Cloud Journey, Security and Business Case Foundation, will be moderated by Rolf Gibbels, head of Worldwide Business Development, Power and Utilities at AWS, and the panel includes Samara Moore, Security Assurance, Global Energy Specialist at AWS, Jerry Casarella, Chief Architect, Public Service Electric and Gas, and John Kochavatr, Chief Information Officer, Portland General Electric. And the panel discussion is sponsored by AWS. So I have a few housekeeping notes for those who are attending online. We're very glad you're here. Today's presentation is both live, we're all here, and interactive, so you can ask a question at any time by typing in the Ask a Question box into the presentation window and on the left side of your screen. We won't have time to answer live questions here, but we will be passing those on to the panelists, and you may receive an offline reply. If you have any technical difficulties, though, please do use that Ask a Question box, and a member of our support team will get right to you. If you're running pop-up blocking software, we recommend that you disable it. In addition, we recommend that you close everything else so that you have the best performance. And for your convenience, the presentation will be available on demand within 24 hours of this live event. A reminder email will be sent to all registrants with a link to the archive, and you can also find it on powergrid.com. For our online audience, we'd love it if you would complete the survey that comes up at the end of the webcast. Okay, so right now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our panel. Today's moderator, Rolf Gibbels, is head of Worldwide Business Development, Power and Utilities at AWS. Rolf has over 20 years of international experience in business development and strategy with a focus on industry solutions, asset performance management, and product lifecycle management software in the energy, process, architecture, and construction industries. Prior to AWS, he built and led the global commercial team for GE Power Digital and the partner and commercial strategy for GE Digital Renewable Energy. Previously, Rolf was the industry solutions leader in IBM's Energy and Utilities organization, where he spent the majority of his career. And here, to my right, is Samara Moore, Security Assurance and Global Energy Specialist at AWS. Samara leads the Security and Compliance Program for regulated industries and public sector in the Americas region. As a thought leader and seasoned cybersecurity practitioner, she has focused her career on implementing and sustaining programs to effectively manage cyber risks and align security measures with business and IT strategies. Prior to joining AWS, Samara managed enterprise security programs for regulated and non-regulated environments for a major energy provider and the federal government. She served as Director of Critical Infrastructure Cybersecurity for the White House National Security Council and Senior Cybersecurity Advisor for the Energy Department. Samara has worked in security consulting, operations, and policy, and led development of frameworks such as the electricity sector cyber capability maturity model, and supported the development of NIST cybersecurity framework. And next we have Jerry Casarella. He's Chief Architect at Public Service Electric and Gas. Jerry is an enterprise architect at New Jersey's largest utility company, PSE&G, where he's worked on a variety of large-scale IT projects as a lead architect, including several grid modernization initiatives. He's currently responsible for the smart operations domain and for the development of enterprise-wide IT strategies and innovation in these areas. Jerry has worked closely with business executives to align business strategies, IT plans, and architectures. He has a BS in Operations Research and Industrial Engineering from Cornell and an MBA from Rutgers. Jerry also teaches as a faculty advisor at Rutgers Business School and is an adjunct professor at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. He's also a member of our esteemed Distributech Advisory Committee. And last, the far right over here, your far left, John Kochavatr. He's Chief Information Officer with Portland General Electric. John joined PGE, as Vice President, Information Technology and Chief Information Officer in 2018. He enables PGE to serve safe, reliable, and affordable electricity to its 2 million customers by driving information technology and digital strategies and solutions across the enterprise. He leads a team of more than 600 people to help decarbonize and electrify PGE's service territory. Prior to joining PGE, Kochavatr served as Chief Information Officer and Chief Digital Officer at GE, Water and Distributed Power from 2012 to 2017, and he served in various CIO and IT leadership roles across several GE divisions, including energy, aviation, oil and gas, and financial services. All right, I'm done. I'm turning it over to Rolf. Go, Rolf.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jennifer, for the introduction. So I'm really glad about this group we have together. And I just want to recap a little bit, even what we heard this morning in the CEOs of CSP Energy's keynote. If you want to summarize it, we always talk about the 3Ds, where you have decarbonization, digitization, decentralization of our energy systems. And this coming together, and she presented this, I think, really well. If you look the next decade, there will be a huge transformation going on. It started globally already in some places, but we are here in the US. I think there's a lot of pockets where this is beginning to happen. Well, we'll see a big change in the next decade, where you, instead of having hundreds of maybe energy sources, all of a sudden you have, not all of a sudden, but quickly, you will have millions of sources. How do you interact? How do you manage? How do you analyze all this different activity and becoming more decentralized and at the same time provide reliable and affordable and secure energy? So this is a tremendous topic, very important, and that's why we assembled this group here. So they have also security expertise, because security, how you capitalize your investments in that industry, because cloud offering is still very much an OpEx investment. We want to go through those topics with this panel today. So I'm really pleased to have this. I'll kick it off with some thoughts, and Samara will present on topics around her subject, security and compliance, followed by Jerry, and then by John, have some introduction about their company further and what they do around cloud and what we mean by cloud journey for those groups. And then we're going to have the second half of the time we have together as a panel. So again, welcome to this group. I would like to start it off with a quote from our Amazon's CEO. I'll actually just read it real quick because it's short. We had 3 big ideas at Amazon that we have stuck with for 20+ years. And they are the reasons we are successful. Put the customer first, invent, and be patient. There's many quotes he has done, very good ones. I felt this is the most appropriate one for our industry, for the utility space. And also in the keynote, Paula said that she often looked at the customers as load or ratepayer. We heard this many times just a couple years ago. It has changed. It's not it's pretty new that you as a utility, we as a utility think about you as a customer and not just as load and ratepayer. So that's and we want to, as AWS and as Amazon, bring our customer obsession to this industry, and we have done this in many places, and you'll hear some examples from this group. To invent constantly. If you just look at, again, Amazon, there's a lot of products you get on a daily basis. A lot of things also didn't work out at the beginning. If you look at the Kindle, some have iPads, but if you look at the first Kindle, that was a block. That was a heavy piece of equipment. Not very easy to use, but evolved towards now a lightweight product. And also in the utility space, I know experimenting is not really a concept which is often people are comfortable with. But on the digital side, there's also things we need to experiment with and try. And this comes also to the patient side, right? This journey will not happen overnight. Some things will happen, they might not work. I mean, have some opportunity also to fail and move on and learn from it and not just look at this as a true failure. You're stuck, you kill it, no, move on. So just this a culture of innovation, as we like to call it, really is tremendous from an Amazon perspective, and something utilities asking us to learn from. We're happy to share that with you. I want to just give you some numbers. AWS, as you know, is a division of Amazon. Business is doing extremely well. We are now a $36 billion run rate. This was the 2019 numbers of last Q3 of last year. We are the #1 in the cloud business, and really proud of it, of all the solutions and the capabilities we are offering. 190 countries. If you actually Google how many countries there are in the world, there's not that many more than 190. So the point is there's a lot of adoption of cloud. It's everywhere. There's millions of customers across virtually today every industry, from agtech, agriculture, to financial services, healthcare, etc. We're also very proud, we announced towards the end of last year our targets around renewable energy. So to provide our businesses across Amazon with 100% renewable energy is a key target for us around sustainability. And obviously we have to run our business, but also help our customers, not just from a technology cloud perspective, but also if you look at sustainability, what data centers do. Actually, overall, you save about 77% on power. You use 70% less power, 84% less power, actually 77% less servers if you do it outside of your own data centers. And overall, the utilization of cleaner energy, because you buy from a portfolio who can also do power purchase agreements much more effectively, you have about 28% cleaner profile the way you're using a cloud system, again, an on-prem versus your own data center versus a public cloud like AWS. And overall, there's many other benefits. Cost saving obviously is one. Our partners here will talk about agility and how you deploy it, how you operationalize. There's a lot of benefits around cloud. I'm sure you're all by now very much familiar with. And with that, it's really not about the if anymore. I think 2 years ago, if we would have the panel, maybe you'd say, why do I really need to move 2 or 3 years? But it's not about why anymore. It's really about if and how fast can I move. And the third one is even in what order. How fast and in what order can I move to the cloud? This is the questions we're getting, and this is what makes it exciting to move to this new phase in evolution. And this really requires flexibility. Also, Paula talked about flexibility. I think within her team, they created a flexibility, I forgot the exact term, program, I believe. Everything has to become more flexible. So if you have the increase in new sources, and it's not just generation, it's electric vehicles, it's battery storage. You're going to have vehicle-to-grid scenarios. The whole system will change, and flexibility is needed across generation, obviously transmission, distribution, and then on the demand and the consumer side. And by now, you're finally going to have consumers who are also prosumers and generate. So this leads me to what we focus on from a focus area, from a solution perspective. It's around IT/OT transformation. It's around the market transformation. I'll give you some examples, and customer engagement. So these are kind of the 4 pillars we see as AWS as relevant. And hopefully in the back you can also see this. I know online it's a little easier to see the chart. If you look at the middle of this chart, the functional cloud really started with the core capabilities of storing your data, compute, providing a layer of security, and providing obviously a connection, the network. That was the essence, the beginning of the cloud, now started 14 years ago from an AWS perspective. But then if you look at the utilities, the data ingestion is obviously important. They will understand how do you bring your data from your various assets, generation, transmission, distribution, your homes, if you talk connected home, into the system. So data ingestion is critical. And now with all the new services around AI, machine learning, artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, IoT, data lakes, edge devices, all this is coming now to really feed into this decentralization of the energy world from an electricity perspective. And also voice is becoming super important as a way to communicate if you're on the consumer side in your home. So it's not just about lowering your volume of your speaker or turning on the lights. You heard some examples from Jerry on how Alexa voice is used in that regard. So within OT, you can have examples around SAP transformation on the IT side. On OT, you really can talk about vegetation management type topics. The market transformation where really peer-to-peer kind of trading topics could come in, and the customer engagement is a lot about the interaction of a customer experience tied maybe to demand response capabilities. So that's for me the introduction to position us a little bit in the context of this panel. So with that, I would like to lead this over to Samara and talk about her topic on security and compliance.
All right. Well, good morning, and it's great to see so many of you here for a talk on security and the business case. It's just reflective of how important this really is for our industry. As Rolf mentioned, secure utilities are increasingly looking to leverage cloud and cloud services to better support their business operations, to better connect and enable their customers, but also to take advantage of some of the security and resilience benefits. Instead of having to maintain your own infrastructure or your data center, you can apply those resources internally to more innovation, and then you can get as needed services such as compute power, database, and storage on an as needed basis. Also, with AWS security, you're going to see the similar security measures that you would have in a data center, such as physical server security, security controls, server isolation, isolation of the network, and isolation of storage. So as an example within the utility industry, I would share with you one from GE Power, where they're leveraging the cloud, particularly AWS, to help them fix issues in days that used to take months. They're able to monitor 900 customer installations and ingest 500,000 records per second. And this really gets to some of the core benefits of the cloud that I'll briefly highlight and then go into a little bit more detail on security. And that's agility, elasticity, cost savings, innovation, and resiliency. From an agility perspective, you can quickly spin up resources as you need them. And why that's really important and helpful is that it allows you to quickly develop applications or solutions, innovate, test, and with limited risk, because you can quickly deprovision and move on if needed. When we think about how this might be applied to security, let's look at an incident response capability, as you may want to test response and recovery capabilities, and then you can deprovision those services if no longer needed. From an elasticity perspective, you can spin up resources as you need them really, really quickly. So hundreds or thousands of servers in minutes. And so this really, really helps you so that you don't necessarily have to over provision capacity to support peak demand. You can really provision what you need and then spin up or spin down as needed. Again, that gets to your cost savings, but also the ability to apply your resources to those things that are most impactful to your business and to innovation. And from an innovation perspective, I'll highlight another example from a customer, Enel, which is a European utility that's using AWS to help them monitor 30 million smart meters and perform predictive maintenance on 16,000 substations. Another important part that I like to highlight here is that there's also more and more solution providers that support utilities that are leveraging cloud to take advantage of the same benefits and then offer them to you as customers and utilities. So I also mentioned resiliency, and I'll just briefly highlight that our AWS cloud is deployed globally across multiple regions. And then within those regions, we have availability zones. And then within those availability zones, multiple physical, distinct data centers that have redundancy then built in within each of the data centers. And where that's really helpful is from a reliability and a resiliency perspective, you really have the capability to architect and design the level of resiliency needed to meet your business needs. So let's dig in a little bit deeper on security. AWS has to meet multiple security standards for security and privacy. Regardless of our customer, your size, regardless of the amount of investment that you have in AWS, you're able to inherit the security controls that we've put in place for security of the cloud infrastructure. And these are controls that we've put in place to meet the needs of some of our most security risk sensitive customers. When we implement those to support our infrastructure, those are inherited by all of our customers. We also have those controls that are regularly tested by independent third-party validators, and our customers can have access to those reports and see proof or validation of the controls that we have in place. It's also important to highlight that we have a number of solution providers and security partners that also provide solutions for the cloud, and you can extend the benefits of what you're inheriting from the cloud infrastructure to also leverage some of the solutions that you may use today on-prem in your data center, as they may have cloud offerings for you. So if I transition, I always think it's important to highlight the global standards that we comply with and attest to on a regular basis. AWS is tested to thousands of security requirements. And again, as I mentioned before, the validation or attestation of those are available for our customers to get proof of. If I go to the next slide here, I wanted to really call out the concept that we have with AWS in our shared security model. AWS is responsible for components and securing components of the cloud, from the host operating system to our virtualization layer and the physical security in the data center. Our customers, really depending on the services that customers use, that's really going to drive what security configurations need to be put in place, as well as managed to meet their security responsibilities. And this is really an important point. One, I want to highlight that customers, utilities, you don't have to do it alone. There's plenty of resources available to help you with both knowing what you need to secure and then how you can do it using AWS services, along with partners that offer solutions to help you with this. In particular, for a given implementation or use case, it's important to know what that means for you. So really the details of what you're inheriting, as well as the controls that you need to configure and manage. So beyond inheriting controls for security, there are services available that really address some of the core areas utilities care about for security and compliance. When I say compliance, it may be compliance to a range of federal or state mandates, or even internal compliance to your internal security governance. And these tools, as you can see on the slide, cover areas from access control to security event monitoring to systems recovery and resiliency. There are a variety of best practice documents that are available for you to leverage, as well as security services targeted to help you meet your requirements. Tools like encryption, and also tools and services solutions that are offered by third-party providers within the cloud. In particular, AWS recently issued a user guide for customers on how they can meet their security and compliance requirements for utilities. So I encourage you all to check that out. What's important here, and what I really wanted to get across, is utilities, you don't have to do this alone. There are resources available for you and really ready to help enable you to meet your security and resiliency objectives. I want to close out just highlighting that AWS supports sensitive security requirements across the globe for critical infrastructure customers, as well as public sector or government entities across the globe. What's provided here is an example from FINRA, from financial services, on how they've benefited from using the cloud. And I won't read the entire statement, but it's just a testament to their experience on how they've seen benefits of security and security within the cloud, as well as savings. I will also, though, say please stick around and hold on, because what's really important is the user experiences that you're about to hear from the next panelist that will really talk about how they're leveraging the cloud securely to accomplish their business and security objectives.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Samara. So we'll lead over to Jerry, but I think it's important also with the last topic how other industries like healthcare, also financial services, really have gone through a lot of the regulatory process, trained and educated auditors, which is, I think, is very important to be part of this journey and this work you're doing.
Absolutely,
Great.
absolutely.
Thank you. So we're going to Jerry. So Jerry's with PSE&G.
Thanks, Ralph.
You take it over.
Good morning. Great to be here. Happy to share a little bit about our company and our cloud journey. Public Service Enterprise Group is a Newark, New Jersey-based enterprise. We're made up of two major business. Public Service Enterprise and Gas is our electric and gas distribution and transmission. And we also have a power generation business. In both cases, we're very proud of our record on safety, operational excellence, and customer experience. I want to talk about our cloud journey. A few years back, we were faced with several large initiatives around grid modernization, customer experience, and energy efficiency. Typically, those areas were handled independently, and those programs were run separately. What we did is took a more holistic approach. We decided to enable all those programs via what we called Energy Cloud Platform. Energy Cloud Platform supports things like smart operations, which is our traditional utility business, work management, store management, asset health, as well as our smart customer to get better customer experience. And we also have a large energy efficiency program that we're going to be expanding. And also things like smart cities and smart home. So instead of tackling all those things individually, what we wanted to do is create a digital platform that would create synergies among all those areas. And what we did is we have this high-level architecture that we call Energy Cloud. And it starts from the bottom layer. Obviously, we have data, we have devices, traditional utility devices like reclosers, but more and more things like smart thermostat, devices like Alexa that generate that data. We then use a communication layer to transport the data into applications that are going to take that data and translate them into things like next best action for customer experience, improved operational efficiency with our ADMS platform. And we do all that with cloud-based integration, leveraging microservices, API as much as possible. And the goal also is to make this platform open as much as possible so that in the future we could work with our partners so that they can in turn create products and services for our customer. But technology is only one component of that. We've also embarked on a big organizational transformation. We have gone from a plan, build, run organization to a product-based organization. And we've also worked with AWS to take their lessons learned around DevOps and incorporate them into our organization. So what we have now is we have dedicated teams that are fully empowered, both IT and OT. So basically, they own product. For example, store management is a product. So they own their product cradle to grave, from planning to delivering projects to also operations. So what that has allowed us to do is make those teams much more agile. It has allowed us to create business outcomes for our customers, and we're leveraging the cloud as much as possible with that. We're also focusing on things like microservices, open source, and obviously cloud services are important for that. To date, I think we've made very good progress. We have about a third of our data center that has already been migrated to AWS, and we're continuing to put more and more critical applications in the cloud, including things like GIS. And we have these teams that now are empowered, and we're using innovation to drive the business. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Great, thank you, Jerry. Good morning, everybody. John Kochavatr, Portland General Electric. It's great to be part of the panel. Thank you to AWS. Thank you, Rolf, for having me today. You know, what I thought I'd do is just give you a quick introduction to Portland General Electric. So we've got We're a vertically integrated investor-owned utility. We've got a service territory of about 2 million and about, we'll just call it about 900,000 account holders. And so the way that we're thinking about customers is customers are people like my family, all right, that are at home right now. I'm the account holder, but whatever happens in the utility affects my family as well. And so that's how we kind of think about how we serve customers. I thought I'd kind of share just some background on Portland General Electric. We like to think of ourselves as reasonably progressive. We've got a pretty deep penetration of smart meters. We have 3 test beds that we've introduced just last year, and so that allows us to test a bunch of different technologies across the PGE service territory with a lot of the decentralized technology that Rolf talked about, because a big focus for us is decarbonization. You'll hear me talk a little bit more about that as we get into the Q&A part. We are also launching at the end of this year a project that we call REIT Ridge, which is a combination of 300 megawatts of wind, 50 megawatts of solar, 30 megawatts of storage. So when we announced it, it was the first of its kind in the country, and so I think it'll be the first to launch at least at the end of this year. So we're really excited about that. And I also add that just the ethos of Oregon, and for those of you that watch our Portlandia, it's where young people go to retire. It's true. I just moved there 2 years ago, so I'm super excited about that. But the ethos of Oregon is such that we have almost a quarter of our customers that buy into the voluntary renewable program. So they voluntarily pay more money to get clean energy, and so that's I think the last stat I saw was that's twice as much as the second highest. So a lot of focus on green. So my story is going to be around just why cloud for Portland General Electric, and I'm going to kind of piggyback on a lot of the stuff that Samara talked about, but I'm going to add some color with regard to how we're thinking about it at Portland General. So I'll start with, and this is not in any particular order, but I'll start with that elasticity piece, right? And so those of us that are in the utility, I think just about all of us in the room, it'd be great if it was steady state, if there weren't such things as storms that came through or natural disasters that we talked about earlier today. But those things happen, and so all of a sudden, when your website, for example, maybe at any given time you have 100 concurrent users, when those events happen, that 100 concurrent turns into 100,000 concurrent, right? And that elasticity is such a big deal for us at Portland General, at least, because when those events happen, from an IT perspective, to build for max case, and that's a lot of what we do in the utility industry, it just costs a lot of money. And the reality is those dollars that go into service that infrastructure is borne ultimately by our customers, and we have to be sensitive to that. So having the elasticity, I think, of the cloud is a big deal for us. And one of the projects we're working on right now is we are rebuilding our customer digital experience so that it can support literally 100,000 concurrent users. And I'm excited about that, and we're going to be able to do that, which kind of gets into the next piece of it. But we're going to be able to do that at a cost that is at par or less than having an on-prem system. So I'll touch on that a little bit more in a second. The second thing that I'll talk about is around this speed and velocity. So when we sort of embarked on this new customer digital experience, I got this original quote that was just in the 8-figure range, right, to go do this thing. And I was like, wow, you could start a company for that kind of money. And so we said, look, if it was just the 6 of us in a room and we were going to build a new customer digital experience, what would it look like? And I think when you put that lens on it, when we put that lens on it, you start to think about it differently. Because the reality is, whatever your mission is, ours is decarbonization among other things, you're competing, right? We're competing against a bunch of different alternatives, whether they're electricity service suppliers or community choice aggregators or just technologies, rooftop solar, residential storage, community solar. So when you're competing, you got to think about the economics of it, right? Anyway, so with the speed and the velocity component, we said, look, can we get something that's a proof of concept within 30 days? And so we worked with a partner, and we got it up in 30 days. And I said, look, the prize for winning the pie eating contest is more pie. So can you get something production ready in 100 days? And they say, yeah, we can do it. And it's going to be done at a fifth of the cost of what was quoted to me. And I'm really excited about that because, you know, one of the things that my team has heard me talk about is Parkinson's law. And if you guys, some of you may know what that is. Parkinson's law says that work tends to fill the time allotted. So if you give something a year, it'll take a year. If you give something 100 days, it'll take 100 days, right? And so that's the kind of philosophy that we're bringing in at Portland General with regard to, you know, cloud as a tool, but really just a leadership and a execution mindset. You know, the third thing that I'll talk about is this idea of variable versus fixed costs, and I'll touch on the sort of OpEx versus CapEx thing. I know that's been a topic that I've heard, and I've only been with Portland General for 2 years, so perhaps I may be coming from a place of naivete. But you know, when I think about the CapEx versus OpEx thing, let me just say that at the end of the day, we want to do what is most economically efficient so that we can ensure that customer rates are as low as they can be so we can compete, right? That's really that kind of the headset. And without getting into nerding out too much on financials, when I did the math, at least on, you know, a CapEx with depreciation and amortization behind it, even when you add the loader for the return on equity, the economics of going cloud in certain areas for us, it just made way more sense. And if you're going to deploy capital, it just makes a lot more sense to deploy capital into longer life assets than into a 5-year short-lived asset for Portland General. And I appreciate the dynamics, the regulatory dynamics may be different in different regions or different states, but that's really the basis of what I have discussed with my CFO. What makes economic sense, right? That being said, I'd also touch on this idea of fixed versus variable costs, and this goes back to the elasticity. So if there are workloads, as you know, Samara and Rolf kind of talked about, if there's workloads that you don't need, you don't have to pay for it, right? So when we close the books at the end of the quarter or the end of the month, we'll ramp up the compute, and then when that's done, let's turn it off. And that there's so much goodness in that, and I'll touch on this with the last part too, with regard to security. It helps to reduce our attack surface, right, when we don't need it, and then we can just ramp it up when we do. The fourth thing that I'll talk about is capabilities, and this is kind of a big deal for us. And you know, I'll give you an example. We, you know, and this is maybe a little sensitive because there are other software providers that may be in the room or that are co-sponsoring this event, where we have bought technologies from those individuals, those companies. But the capabilities that we have gotten from these cloud solutions have allowed us to build our own solutions. And I'll give you an example where we have revenue loss, right? Theft, if you will. So we're using a piece of software. It costs us $600,000 a year to support this thing on an annual basis, right? Hit rate on that thing was 4%. Roll 100 trucks, you get 4 hits on it, right? So we had our data scientists start leveraging the cloud solution. We were in the cloud for 8 months, right? So we have data scientists go in there. They're going crazy in this thing. We developed another solution, a third of the cost, 54% hit rate. And now we're thinking, gosh, how do we productize this thing? Maybe we'll start selling it, right? But those are some of the capabilities, I think, that we have found, at least in Portland General, to really elevate our game with customers, provide them with much better and different experiences, drive efficiencies within our operations. The last thing I'll talk about is security and resiliency. And I think you all are kind of aware of this, but you know, if we have an event that affects our data center, for example, yes, we have a backup data center, but having the ability to move workloads up into the cloud just gives us an extra level of resiliency at a much favorable cost than we could find sort of any place else, right? And so I don't want to be sort of, you know, over-indexing on, hey, cloud is the best thing, because there are some things that we don't move to the cloud, right? All the OT stuff is not in the cloud, right? Anything that controls the grid on the bulk electric system, that is not on the cloud. That remains in data centers that we own and operate. But I will tell you, for those things that you can move, the stuff that we put sort of in the corporate region, whether it's Office 365, whether it's Workday, which we launched in 9 months, whether it's ServiceNow, which we use to manage all of our IT governance. We launched that in 4 months. I mean, you get that speed, that velocity at a cost that really makes a ton of sense. And everybody's going to have a different case for this, but for us, it's really moved the needle. So I'm excited to be part of the panel.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the Q&A.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
It's always fascinating when you listen to, obviously, utility, how power plants run. You talk about different load profiles and peaking events. There's the same in cloud usage, right? I mean, you pay as you go, like you would do with electricity most of the time. But you also have peaking events, like if you have, we learned from like the big Black Fridays and Cyber Monday kind of events. I mean, you have to ramp up, right? And how the user base, and that's what you have to do in natural disasters and things to communicate. The last thing you want is your site to go down. We even have spot pricing as well, like as you have in the space. Jerry, I would like to deep dive a little bit more in what you talked about, because you have so congratulations also on this energy cloud strategy and journey you are on. It's a very comprehensive leadership you're showing there as a utility. Can you explain a little bit more how cloud aids you in this transformation, and also how you touched on this a little bit, how you structured your teams? Because one thing, you said cloud is technology, but it's also a way of transforming your business. It's bringing you into innovation. It's also a business transformation. If you can explain a little bit more how you've done that.
So different level how the cloud has helped us. Obviously, when people first hear about cloud, it's the computing and the storage. So we're taking full advantage of that. John did a nice job talking about the flexibility that you get from that. So moving a large portion of our data center to the cloud, we've been able to drive operational efficiencies and drive cost of computing and storage down. So that's kind of the basics. But on top of that, we've also been leveraging things like cloud analytics. We have enabled several use cases where we're able to take large data sets from AMI, other data sources, ingest them into a data lake, curate it, and then allow people, young engineers, more experienced engineers, to go against the data and do things like look at the impact of electric vehicle penetration, look at theft detection, storm management, and all that is happening in a matter of weeks and not months. So it's given us much more agility. It's empowered the team to do much more innovative things. And then, we've also been leveraging AWS working backwards model and their best practices in how we're able to empower these teams. So, the combination of the technology, combination of the organizational transformation has really allowed our team that are now self-empowered to really take control, work with the business, and deliver those business outcomes.
Right. How do you call those smaller teams?
Two pizza teams. So 2 pizza teams, for those that don't know, Jeff Bezos says the team should not be larger than what a 2 pizza can feed. And the idea is to have that team fully dedicated with all the right resources, fully empowered to be agile and deliver the product that they're responsible for.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, it's a very important concept to bring this agility, again, not just from a technology perspective, but also from a team and structure perspective, and enable those teams. It's a recruiting tool too, right? So recruiting of resources who come to the utilities who might not typically come to utilities, but if you give them an environment where they have all the open tools and platforms to work when, you have a chance, and especially with more sensitivity around sustainability in the population, not just in our industry, I think there's something.
Yeah, this year we've insourced a lot of the work that we used to outsource. So we have over 100 new people that have started, and those folks come out of college who already have expertise around analytics and machine learning. So having those cloud services readily available for them to leverage has been really great.
John, for you, the use, you touched a little bit on some of the use cases. If you can maybe describe them a little bit deeper, also like what were some of the business drivers or triggers to let you to those?
Yeah.
And what outcomes do you expect, and how you really then also define, success around that work?
Yeah. So, Rolf, what I would kind of share with the group here is, First of all, I'll kind of frame it with what you started with, decarbonization, decentralization, and digitalization. One of the examples that I'll share, there's a proliferation of the distributed energy resources. All of us are quite aware of that. And so I think that makes all of us in the room that are in the IT and the OT space, like at the middle of it, right? We're at the center of it, which is awesome. It's fun, exciting, it's daunting, sort of at the same time. So the use cases are varied, and there are many. So I shared with you kind of the theft, the energy theft piece of it, but I can talk a little bit about, something basic is mapping meters to transformers, right? Mapping meters to transformers, and so, we're looking at, signatures, right? Voltage signatures to confirm whether or not we've got the right mappings that are happening, and why is that important? Because if we're going to create a customer digital experience that's going to be meaningful to customers, we have to get it right when we send proactive outage alerts, for example. Or if we have situations where you've got multiple electric vehicles that are on the same transformer. We heard that this morning. We see that. And using some of the technologies that are available to us now, we can run analytics on that and say, well, what do we think that the life of that transformer is going to be? How do we start to do proactive maintenance on that equipment so that we can mitigate any outages, and that's going to help mitigate some of the safety and safety numbers that a lot of us care about as it relates to reliability. And that's just scratching the surface. I can go on. We have so many examples where we're running analytics at the consumer or the commercial and industrial or C&I level now. So we look at our top 25 customers, and we can run analytics to say, well, what is their propensity for outages? What are the circumstances under which it happens? How much of it is vegetation related, animal related, weather related? And we could put some mitigations in place for that. So one of the biggest hospitals that we support, for example, the outages were more than any of us would like, and we found out, well, it's mainly animal, and so how do we start to rethink about rerouting energy to elevate the reliability of that power? And that is all done through the analytics and the capabilities that I talked about through these cloud technologies.
And important is also to mention that, we talk machine learning, AI, are important topics, and the entry level becomes down and down also to those tools. You don't have to hire experts anymore. The way you're creating machine learning, the entry point is getting much lower, which also is important because sometimes it sounds scary. Like, do I need to hire all these data scientists who make $1 million a year? So I can't afford those. But it's an important part how this all comes together and merges.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of add one other thing to that. First of all, the data scientists aren't going to cost $1 million a year. If you're paying that much, you're probably overpaying. But there's lots of options out there. You can outsource this work. I'll tell you, it's some of the, Jerry talked about just some of the recent college grads. They are incredibly smart. And when you give them these tools, they'll spend all night working on it. Not because they have to, because they want to, and they love doing it. And I think that's really compelling.
It's just another example. You mentioned machine learning, but data lakes as well. So AWS has a data lake formation service. So that helps you ramp up the data lake much more faster than you would, if you didn't have those tools.
Samara, so obviously all those use cases require, again, security, right? So can you give us some example how actually we help our customers in that journey?
Sure. And I'll group it into really two main buckets. From work that we're doing to provide resources to customers to help them along the way, really helping to simplify what security means. So we have a host of services available to our customers, and we've heard feedback. So which security service do I use when? Where are the capabilities within a given service so that I can address security needs? And so one of the things that we've worked to do with our user guide is to provide that mapping, but then also with all of our services, provide a description of security tailored for each service to help them out. And we're continuing to develop resources like that to really help simplify and simplify security and support our customers in meeting their security objectives. The other big bucket that I would put into is really engaging in external forums to really help explain and help address what does it mean to be secure in using the cloud? How do you work with different regulatory regimes to really help address the security and the compliance needs of utilities? And how do we get to a point to where we can demonstrate compliance for those areas where it is a good fit or it is a good business case to use cloud services?
Okay, excellent.
So in our case, I talked about our digital energy cloud. So what we do around security is every time we introduce a new AWS service, whether it's EC2, S3 for storage, database, Aurora, we take that service and bring it to our security team, and they go through it and they approve it. Once it's approved, then it's available for everyone to use. So we have about 20 services that we're actually using, and every day we're adding more and more. So once you have this set of services in place, has gone through security reviews, then they're easily accessible and also enables the agile development.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Time runs fast, I'm amazed. So I would like to end this with just a quick feedback from each of you about what's your key takeaway from this session, or the takeaway you want to take the audience with them. And I want to have three, so we have three in the panel. When we start with John, what's the main takeaway?
Yeah, so I would tell you all that we all have our different missions. I talked about Portland General Electric focusing on decarbonization, and we've got to integrate all these decentralized resources to do it. And whether that applies to you, the reality is we're all competing, right? We're all competing, and if you don't sort of move forward with the speed and the velocity, the capabilities, somebody else is going to go do it. Now, in the utility space, I want us all to succeed, particularly on this mission toward decarbonization and servicing all of our customers. But my takeaway, Rolf, I would say just think about how you compete, and if you don't, somebody else is going to do it for you, which is fine if you want to seed that space. But being in the utility space, I want us all to win together. So thank you.
Yeah, and to add to this, because often in the regulatory world, they thought there is no competition, but there now also is competition. So I think on every level, deregulated, regulated, and then obviously it's different also around the world, but it's happening. Yeah, thanks. Jerry, what's your?
Yeah, from my perspective, I've been in the utility industry for 20 years now. Really gotten into the cloud last few years, but a key takeaway for me, and that you should think about, is that a lot of the work to enable application and system for the cloud has already been done. You heard a lot of security. You heard some of the things that we're doing. So it's not as difficult as it was to take your existing application and move them to the cloud. So I think the theme for this year, Distributech, is the future of energy. Part of that future is going to be cloud. So I think the good news is there's a lot of work that's been done, and if we can leverage that, I think we'll all benefit from that. Also, I'm glad to see that AWS is participating so heavily in Distributech this year. I think that's a good sign of things to come. So thank you.
Thank you. Samara, what's the key takeaway you want the audience to know about?
Sure. So I'll go back to something, Rolf, you mentioned in the beginning around one of our leadership principles of being customer obsessed. And I'll marry that with security. We truly are customer obsessed and focused on addressing the security needs for this industry and for utility. And we have resources available and are here to help. They really run the spectrum both on what you're inheriting. So please engage with us to learn more about that, but also what you can do to configure and manage security for your solutions and the services that you're leveraging. So again, we have resources out there. I encourage you to check out our user guide in this area, and appreciate everyone being here today.
One other comment along those lines. We are starting a AWS Utilities user group. So for those of you that are interested, please contact me, and be happy to hook you up.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all your input. So compete. Cloud is ready, right? It's not if anymore. It's how fast we can go, and we're here to help from a security perspective with all the tools. I think, Jennifer, you will come back up and help us close.
That's right. That's
this
right. Can you
session.
hear me? So I want to echo what Jerry said. AWS has been a great supporter of Distributech this year, also sponsoring our Initiate, which is our area for startups. So I really highly recommend everyone go check that out. We've got 21 amazing startups that are all showing off what they've figured out, and they'll be pitching their cool technologies. All right. Well, on behalf of Power Grid International and Distributech International and Clarion Energy, I would like to thank today's panelists and our moderator, Rolf. Thank you all, John and Jerry and Samara. And our sponsor, AWS, for today's presentation, Utility Cloud Journey Security Business Case Foundation. The presentation will be archived within 24 hours and can be accessed from our homepage on powergrid.com. A reminder email will be sent to everybody who registered with a direct link to the archives. Thank you so much for joining us today, those of you online and those of you in the room. Really appreciate you're here. We look forward to seeing you again in the near future.
Thank you.